Welcome back to my channel, and I am back with another hour of scary horror stories with rain sounds to fall asleep to. Only 1 hour today, because I didn't have much time. If you want to listen to more horror stories, make sure to watch my other videos and to subscribe. Now lay back, relax, and let's get started. In the vast expanse of the Northlands, where winter seemed endless and the night stretched on forever, there existed a kingdom called Asfer. Surrounded by towering snow-covered mountains and dense, frost-bitten forests, Asfer was a kingdom ruled by King Milan, a ruler known for his wisdom and strength. His people adored him, for he had protected them through many hardships, famine, drought, and even war. But the Milan had one weakness that only his closest advisors knew of, a prophecy that haunted him since his youth, a prophecy foretelling the arrival of a great darkness that would one day threaten his kingdom, a darkness that no sword nor shield could defeat. This prophecy, given to him by an old seer, had plagued his dreams and cast a shadow over his rule. For the seer had warned that the only way to defeat this darkness was to find the Heart of Winter, a mythical relic believed to be hidden somewhere in the depths of the frozen wilds, far beyond the borders of his kingdom, where no one had ever dared to venture. As years passed, King Milan grew older, and his son, Prince Edrin, grew into a young man of courage and loyalty. Edrin had heard rumors of the prophecy, but had never known its full extent. It wasn't until his father fell gravely ill, his strength waning with each passing day, that he summoned Edrin to his chamber and revealed the truth. Milan spoke of the prophecy, of the dark power that was destined to rise, and of the Heart of Winter, which was said to hold the power to banish this darkness. But he also spoke of the dangers of the frozen wilds, a land so cold that even the bravest warriors had perished within hours of entering. Thalin's voice was weak, but his eyes held a fierce determination as he told his son that it was now his duty to protect Asfer, to fulfill the prophecy and find the Heart of Winter before it was too late. Without hesitation, Edrin accepted the task, swearing to his father that he would return with the relic and secure the safety of their people. Edrin prepared for his journey, gathering supplies, consulting with scholars, and training for the harsh conditions of the frozen wilds. He was joined by 3 of his most loyal companions: Rowan, a skilled tracker and archer; Kira, a healer with knowledge of the ancient herbs and plants; and Torvald, a towering warrior known for his strength and loyalty. Together, they set out from the kingdom, traveling through the dense forests and across frozen rivers, each day bringing them closer to the edge of the known world. The journey was grueling, the cold biting into their bones, and they encountered many challenges along the way. Treacherous ice fields that threatened to swallow them whole, snowstorms that left them blind and disoriented, and strange creatures that lurked in the shadows, their eyes gleaming in the darkness. Yet, despite the hardships, Edrin and his companions pressed on, driven by the knowledge that their kingdom's survival depended on their success. Days turned into weeks, and soon they reached the edge of the frozen wilds, a desolate wasteland where the wind howled like a beast and the ground was covered in ice as far as the eye could see. The air was so cold that their breath froze in midair, and they were forced to cover their faces with thick furs to protect themselves from frostbite. It was here, in this unforgiving land, that they encountered the first of many trials. They came upon a massive ice wall, so tall that it seemed to touch the sky. There was no way around it, and climbing it seemed impossible. But as they searched for a solution, Rowan noticed strange markings etched into the ice, symbols that glowed faintly in the moonlight. Kira, who had studied the ancient texts, recognized the symbols as a riddle, a test to determine if they were worthy of passing through. They spent hours deciphering the riddle, each line revealing a clue to the solution. When they finally spoke the answer aloud, the ice wall began to crack, a narrow passageway opening before them. They continued onward, venturing deeper into the frozen wilds, where the land grew colder and the air thinner. The second trial came when they reached a valley filled with towering ice sculptures, each one depicting a different creature: wolves, bears, even mythical beasts like dragons and griffins. As they moved through the valley, the sculptures began to stir, their eyes glowing with a malevolent light. Edrin and his companions realized too late that these sculptures were guardians, enchanted creatures bound to protect the Heart of Winter from intruders. They fought with all their strength, dodging the icy claws and fangs of the creatures, their weapons barely scratching the enchanted ice. Kira, remembering an ancient chant taught to her by her grandmother, began to sing a melody that echoed through the valley. The creatures paused, their movements slowing, and Edrin seized the opportunity to lead his friends out of the valley, the haunting melody fading as they escaped. Exhausted and wounded, they pressed on, driven by the knowledge that they were close, that the heart of winter was near. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they reached the final trial, a massive chasm filled with swirling, icy mist. On the other side, they could see a faint glow, a light that pulsed like a heartbeat. Edrin knew that this was the heart of winter, but the chasm seemed impassable, a void that stretched endlessly in both directions. Desperate, Edrin knelt on the edge, calling out to the spirits of the frozen wilds, pleading for their help. For a long moment, there was only silence, and then, a voice echoed in his mind, ancient and powerful. It spoke of sacrifice, of the price that must be paid to claim the heart of winter. Edrin understood at once. He turned to his companions, gratitude in his eyes, and told them that he must cross the chasm alone. Despite their protests, he stepped forward, feeling the icy mist swirl around him, lifting him into the air. As he floated across the chasm, he felt his strength fading, his vision blurring, but he kept his gaze fixed on the glowing light, his hand outstretched. At last, he reached the heart of winter, a crystal of pure ice, radiating a cold so intense that it burned his skin. Summoning the last of his strength, he grasped the crystal, feeling its power surge through him, filling him with a warmth that was both fierce and gentle. With the heart of winter in his hands, he felt a connection to the land, to the spirits of the frozen wilds, and he knew that the darkness threatening his kingdom would be banished. When he returned to his companions, they could see the change in him, a light in his eyes that had not been there before. They journeyed back to Asfer, the heart of winter safely in Edrin's possession. When they finally returned to the kingdom, they were met with cheers and tears, for word had spread of their journey, of the trials they had faced. Edrin went to his father, holding the heart of winter before him, and as the crystal's light filled the room, King Thalin's strength returned, his illness lifting like a fog. The kingdom rejoiced, for the prophecy had been fulfilled, the darkness banished, and Asfer was safe once more. Edrin became a legend, a hero whose tale would be told for generations, but he knew that it was not just his strength that had saved them, but the loyalty of his friends, the wisdom of his ancestors, and the spirit of the land itself. And so, he ruled with humility and gratitude, always remembering the journey that had brought him to this moment, the trials he had faced, and the heart of winter that had given him the strength to protect his people. In the deep, hidden forests of Elderglen, where ancient trees towered so high that their branches seemed to brush the sky and sunlight was filtered through a canopy of thick green leaves, lay a village called Hallowmere. Hallowmere was a quiet place, untouched by the chaos of the world, where people lived in harmony with the land, tending their farms, raising their families, and telling tales around the fire at night. Yet, despite the peace that enveloped this village, there was one tale that stirred fear in the hearts of even the bravest villagers. It was the tale of the Shrouded Grove, a cursed part of the forest that lay beyond the boundaries of Hallowmere, veiled in a perpetual mist and filled with an unnatural silence. The Shrouded Grove was said to be haunted, home to spirits that roamed the misty woods at night, looking for lost souls to lead astray. No one who entered the grove ever returned, and even the elders of Hallowmere, who had lived through countless seasons, avoided it at all costs. Yet, as with all legends, there were those who doubted its truth, especially the young and curious minds of the village. One such skeptic was a young woman named Lyra. She had grown up hearing the stories of the Shrouded Grove from her grandmother, who would warn her to stay far away from it. But Lyra was restless, filled with a thirst for adventure and a fascination with the unknown. While the others in her village lived contentedly, tending to their daily tasks, Lyra dreamed of exploring the world beyond the village, of discovering hidden secrets and unraveling ancient mysteries. And so, on a misty autumn morning, just as the first leaves began to turn golden, Lyra set out toward the Shrouded Grove, ignoring the warnings of her friends and family. She carried only a small satchel filled with provisions, a knife for protection, and a talisman her grandmother had given her, said to ward off evil spirits. As she approached the edge of the grove, the air grew colder, and the familiar sounds of the forest, birdsong, rustling leaves, the distant call of a deer, faded into silence. Lyra felt a chill run down her spine, but her curiosity propelled her forward. She stepped into the mist, the world around her becoming a blur of gray shadows and twisted tree trunks. The deeper she ventured, the thicker the mist grew, until she could barely see her own hand in front of her face. The silence was oppressive, as if the forest itself was holding its breath, waiting. Hours passed, or perhaps only minutes, It was hard to tell in the grove, where time seemed to lose its meaning. Lyra felt a strange sensation, as if she were being watched, but when she turned, there was nothing there, only the endless mist. She called out, hoping to break the silence, but her voice was swallowed by the fog, leaving only an echo that seemed to linger, hauntingly, in the air. Just as she was beginning to doubt her decision, she saw a faint light flickering in the distance. Her heart quickened, and she moved toward it, stumbling over roots and rocks hidden by the mist. The light grew brighter, and she realized it was coming from a small clearing. In the center of the clearing stood an ancient tree, its trunk gnarled and twisted, its branches bare and reaching toward the sky like skeletal fingers. At the base of the tree, a figure was crouched, a man shrouded in a tattered cloak, his face hidden beneath a hood. He was holding a lantern, the source of the light, which cast an eerie glow over the clearing. Lyra hesitated, but her curiosity overcame her fear, and she stepped forward, calling out to the stranger. The figure turned slowly, and as he lifted his head, Lyra felt a shiver of recognition. His face was pale and hollow, his eyes a piercing shade of blue that seemed to see through her. He was neither young nor old, his features ageless and unsettling. He introduced himself as Fenris, a guardian of the shrouded grove, bound to the forest by a curse that he could not escape. Fenris told her that long ago he had been a healer, a man devoted to protecting the forest and its creatures. But he had angered a powerful spirit by trying to save a young child who had been lost in the grove. The spirit, angered by his interference, had cursed him to remain in the grove for eternity, never to leave, never to know peace. His only companion was the lantern, which held a fragment of his soul, bound to him by magic older than the trees themselves. Fenris warned Lyra that she should leave, that the grove was a place of lost souls, of restless spirits that would not take kindly to her presence. But Lyra, fascinated by his story, refused to leave. She asked him to show her the secrets of the grove, to reveal the mysteries that had been hidden from the world for centuries. Fenris, though reluctant, saw something in Lyra's eyes, a determination, a courage that reminded him of the life he had once lived. He agreed on the condition that she would leave at dawn, for if she stayed longer, the grove would claim her as it had claimed so many before. And so, under the pale light of the lantern, Fenris led Lyra deeper into the shrouded grove, guiding her through the misty paths and ancient trees. He showed her hidden glades filled with rare herbs, plants that glowed with an ethereal light, and pools of water so clear they mirrored the stars. He told her stories of the spirits that dwelled in the forest, of the creatures that roamed the night, and of the magic that bound the grove to the world of the living. As they wandered, Lyra felt a strange sense of belonging, as if the grove were calling to her, whispering secrets only she could hear. Hours passed, and dawn began to break, casting a faint light over the forest. Fenris urged her to leave, to return to her village and forget the grove, but Lyra hesitated, drawn to the forest in a way she could not explain. She begged Fenris to let her stay, to teach her more about the magic of the grove, about the spirits that dwelled within it. But Fenris, his eyes filled with sorrow, shook his head. He told her that the grove was a place of the lost, a realm that demanded a sacrifice from all who entered. If she stayed, she would be bound to the grove, just as he was, forever a part of its endless cycle of mist and shadow. Reluctantly, Lyra turned to leave, but as she walked away, she felt a deep ache in her heart, a longing that pulled her back toward the grove. She turned one last time to look at Fenris, but he was already fading into the mist, his lantern flickering like a distant star. As she left the shrouded grove and returned to her village, Lyra felt changed. The world around her seemed dull, lifeless, as if the colors had faded, the sounds muted. She tried to return to her old life, to forget the grove and the strange encounter with Fenris, but the memories haunted her, filling her dreams with visions of mist and shadows, of ancient trees and silent spirits. Over time, Lyra grew distant from her family and friends, spending her days wandering the edges of the forest, hoping to catch a glimpse of the grove, to hear the whispers of the spirits once more. She became a legend in her own right, known as the Witch of Hallowmere, a woman touched by the forest, filled with knowledge of herbs and healing, of spirits and shadows. She would sit by the fire at night, telling stories to the children of the village, warning them of the dangers of the shrouded grove, of the spirits that dwelled within. But in her heart, she knew that one day she would return, that the grove would call her back, and that she would walk once more through the misty paths, guided by the light of the lantern and the ageless gaze of Fenris. And so, as the years passed, Lyra grew older, her hair turning silver, her eyes still filled with the same curiosity and longing that had led her to the grove so many years before. On a quiet autumn night, with the first frost settling over the fields, she slipped away from the village, leaving behind only a small talisman by her bedside, a gift from her grandmother, a protection against evil. The villagers searched for her, but Lyra was never seen again. Some say she was taken by the spirits of the grove, claimed as a lost soul. Others say she found Fenris and joined him as a guardian of the forest, a spirit bound to the mist and shadows. But in the village of Halomir, her story lived on, told around the fire on misty autumn nights, a tale of curiosity and courage, of sacrifice and mystery, of a young woman who dared to venture into the shrouded grove, and of the secrets she discovered within its depths. In the ancient land of Talendra, a realm woven with magic and mystery, there was a forgotten valley known as Vale of the Eternals. This place, hidden from all maps and only spoken of in whispers, was said to be a sanctuary for powers beyond mortal understanding, a refuge where spirits, lost souls, and ancient beings rested. Legends told of an artifact hidden there, a crystal known as the Star's Heart, which held the power to alter fate itself. It was rumored that anyone who found and claimed the Star's Heart could reshape the very fabric of destiny, either bringing forth a golden age or unleashing unimaginable chaos. The kingdom of Talendra had, for centuries, flourished under the rule of House Morvain, a dynasty known for its wisdom, valor, and fairness. But King Galdrin, the last of the Morvain bloodline, was aging and without an heir. His court was fraught with tension, nobles and advisors each vying for influence and control, knowing that the stability of the realm would soon be in jeopardy. King Galdrin, who had once been a mighty warrior, was haunted by visions of his kingdom in ruins, of fires consuming the grand citadel of Elder's Reach, of shadows overtaking the lands. These visions troubled him deeply, as they grew more vivid and ominous with each passing night. Desperate, he sought counsel from the royal oracle, a seer known as Celeste, who possessed insight beyond the grasp of ordinary mortals. Celeste told him of the Star's Heart in the Vale of the Eternals, revealing that it was perhaps the only force powerful enough to reshape the fate of Talendra and stave off the darkness he had seen. However, she warned him that finding it would require a soul both pure and resilient, for the Vale was guarded by ancient wards, challenges that would test not only strength, but the very heart and spirit of anyone who entered. Yet King Galdrin had no family left, no one he could send, and the burden of the quest weighed heavily on him, for he knew that without a worthy heir or a miraculous salvation, Talendra would fall. At this time, far from the royal court, there was a young man named Alaric, who lived in a quiet village by the sea, unaware of the turmoil that plagued the kingdom. He was a humble fisherman, known for his kind heart and boundless curiosity about the world beyond the waves. Orphaned as a child, he had been raised by his aunt and uncle, who had often recounted tales of the grandeur of Talendra and the mighty House Morvain, though such stories seemed like myths to Alaric, as he lived a simple life focused on daily survival. One evening, as Alaric walked along the shore, he saw an unusual sight, a falcon bearing the crest of House Morvain, circling above him before descending and landing on a rock nearby. Attached to its leg was a scroll sealed with the royal insignia. Alaric's hands shook as he broke the seal and read the letter, which spoke of an ancient artifact, a quest, and a summons to the royal court. In disbelief, he looked around, wondering if this was some elaborate jest. Yet he could feel the weight of the words, the urgency of the call, and in his heart, he felt a strange pull, a sense that this was meant for him. Against the advice of his family, who warned him of the dangers, Alaric journeyed to Elder's Reach, the capital of Talendra. It was a grand city with towering walls and streets bustling with life, unlike anything he had ever seen. He was ushered into the royal palace, where he stood before the aged King Galdrin, who looked upon him with eyes filled with both hope and sorrow. The king explained the dire circumstances, the visions that haunted him, and the prophecy surrounding the Star's Heart. He spoke of the Vale of the Eternals, the trials that awaited, and the promise of salvation if the Star's Heart could be retrieved and used wisely. Alaric, though overwhelmed, felt a fire ignite within him, a courage he had not known he possessed. Swearing fealty to the king, he pledged to embark on the quest, to seek out the Star's Heart and bring hope back to Talendra. The king provided him with a small escort, a group of 4 skilled companions to aid him on his journey. There was Melis, a fierce warrior with unmatched skill in swordsmanship, Nara, a cunning rogue and master of stealth, Leora, a healer with knowledge of ancient remedies, and Brecken, a scholar and mage who had studied the arcane secrets of the land. Together, they set out, leaving behind the familiar lands of Talendra as they ventured into the wilds, toward the fabled Vale of the Eternals. They traveled through dense forests, across perilous mountains, and through harsh deserts, each new landscape more treacherous than the last. As they drew closer to the Vale, they encountered signs of the ancient magic that protected it. Strange creatures with otherworldly auras, illusions that distorted their path, and storms that seemed to spring from nowhere, blocking their way. But with each challenge, Alaric found strength he did not know he had. He led his companions with a quiet determination, a resilience that inspired them, for they could see in his eyes a depth of resolve that reminded them of the legends of old. Finally, they reached the edge of the Vale of the Eternals, a place that seemed to exist outside of time. The air was thick with magic, shimmering like mist in the early dawn. They knew that beyond this point lay the trials that would test them in ways they could scarcely imagine. The first trial was one of strength and endurance. They found themselves in a labyrinth of stone, with walls that shifted and closed in, leaving them trapped in a maze that seemed to stretch on forever. Shadows moved within the maze, dark creatures that attacked from the darkness, testing their skill and resilience. Alaric fought side by side with his companions, his strength surprising even himself as he defended his friends, carving a path through the endless corridors. After what felt like days, they emerged from the labyrinth, battered but triumphant, each of them realizing that they were stronger together than alone. The second trial was one of wisdom. They entered a chamber filled with ancient glyphs, the walls lined with texts written in a language long forgotten. Brecken, the scholar, recognized some of the symbols, realizing that they needed to solve a riddle hidden within the texts. Hours passed as they pieced together the clues, each symbol revealing a fragment of the answer. It was a test of patience, of understanding, and of unity, for they knew that only by working together could they find the solution. When they spoke the answer aloud, the glyphs glowed, and a doorway appeared, leading them to the final trial. The third and final trial was one of the heart. They found themselves in a vast, silent field under a starlit sky, facing visions of their deepest fears, their darkest regrets. Alaric saw his family, lost to the ravages of time, saw himself alone and adrift, his heart weighed down by sorrow. Each of his companions faced their own specters, memories of loss, of failures, of loved ones left behind. It was a test of inner strength, of confronting the past and finding peace. With tears in his eyes, Alaric stepped forward, speaking words of comfort to his friends, reminding them that they were not defined by their pasts but by the courage they held in their hearts. His words gave them strength, and together they banished the visions, emerging from the trial with newfound clarity and unity. At last they reached the heart of the Vale, where the stars hard rested, a crystal of ethereal beauty that pulsed with a gentle, warm light. Alaric approached it, feeling its power resonate within him, a force that seemed to speak to his very soul. As he reached out to touch it, he felt a surge of energy, a connection to the past, the present, and the future of Talendra. The stars hard revealed to him a vision of the kingdom, of the peace and prosperity that could be achieved if it were used wisely, but also of the destruction that could come if its power were wielded recklessly. With a heart full of hope, Alaric made his decision. He swore to use the stars hard to protect his people, to uphold the ideals of House Morvain, to bring an era of peace to Talendra. With his companions by his side, he returned to Elder's Reach, where he presented the stars hard to the king. King Galdrin, with tears in his eyes, saw in Alaric the heir he had longed for, the soul worthy of carrying forth his legacy. He named Alaric as his successor, adopting him as his son and sealing a new bond that would forever unite the kingdom. And so, Alaric became the first king of a new era, a ruler whose story would echo through the ages as the one who braved the Vale of the Eternals, who faced the trials of strength, wisdom, and heart, and who held the power to reshape fate with the purity of his spirit. Under his reign, Talendra flourished, becoming a beacon of hope and unity, its people thriving under the guidance of a ruler who had faced the depths of his soul and emerged stronger for it. And though the Vale of the Eternals would fade back into legend, its legacy lived on in Alaric, the humble fisherman who had risen to become a king. In the distant kingdom of Andril, where towering mountains met lush valleys and rivers carved through emerald forests, there was a town called Rivenmore, nestled near a deep and mysterious lake known as the Veiled Abyss. The lake earned its name because of the dense, perpetual mist that hung over its surface, making it nearly impossible to see beyond a few feet. The people of Rivenmore believed the Veiled Abyss was cursed, a portal to a darker world, where spirits and creatures from ancient tales lurked in the shadows. Parents warned their children to stay away from the lake, and fishermen who braved its waters told stories of strange lights beneath the surface, eerie whispers, and shadows that moved as though alive. Among the townsfolk was a young woman named Alara, who had lived her whole life in Rivenmore. She was quiet and thoughtful, her eyes always seeming to focus on something beyond the present, something hidden and distant. Alara had always felt a strange pull toward the veiled abyss, an inexplicable curiosity that had only grown stronger with each passing year. She would often sit on the shore, watching the mist shift and swirl, listening to the faint sounds that drifted from the depths of the lake, sounds that seemed like the echoes of voices calling her name. Her grandmother, an old healer who still remembered the ancient ways, had often told Alara stories of the lake, warning her of the dangers and speaking of a powerful relic hidden within the depths, a crystal known as the Heart of the Abyss. According to legend, the Heart of the Abyss was a source of immense power, created by the first mages of Andoril to protect the kingdom from dark forces. But over time, the magic had turned, corrupting the lake and trapping the crystal beneath the water, where it now lay guarded by the spirits of those who had tried and failed to claim it. Her grandmother had warned her that the crystal was a lure, a trap set to ensnare those who sought power. But Alara could not shake the feeling that the heart was calling to her, drawing her to the veiled abyss. One night, unable to resist any longer, she crept from her home and made her way to the lake, the mist thick and heavy around her, muffling the sounds of the town behind her. She waded into the water, the chill biting into her skin, and with each step, she felt a strange warmth in her chest, a pulsing rhythm that seemed to guide her, as though the crystal itself were leading her to its hiding place. Deeper and deeper she went, until the water was up to her waist, her heart pounding as the mist closed in around her, hiding the shore from view. Suddenly, she felt a presence, a cold, dark energy that filled the air, making it difficult to breathe. She stopped, frozen in place, as a figure appeared before her, rising from the water as though formed from the mist itself. It was a man, tall and cloaked in shadows, his face obscured, his eyes gleaming with a cold, piercing light. He introduced himself as Kalen, a guardian of the Heart of the Abyss, bound to protect it from those who sought to use its power for their own gain. He told her that the heart was not a gift, but a curse, a relic that had absorbed the darkest magic in the kingdom, a power that would consume anyone who dared to claim it. But Alara, driven by a need she could not explain, refused to turn back. She insisted that she was not seeking power but understanding, a chance to unravel the mysteries that had haunted her for so long. Kalen, though skeptical, saw something in her eyes, a determination, a purity that was rare in those who came to the veiled abyss. He warned her that to reach the heart, she would have to face trials, challenges that would test her spirit, her mind, and her heart, and that if she failed, she would be bound to the lake, just as he was, her soul forever trapped in the mist. Alara agreed, knowing that she could not return without the answers she sought, and Kalen led her into the depths of the lake, where the water grew dark and cold, where the light of the stars above faded into an endless void. They journeyed through the shadows, past ancient ruins submerged in the lake, past statues of forgotten gods and temples that had been lost to time. The first trial was one of courage. Alara found herself in a chamber filled with swirling shadows, where figures from her past appeared. Her fears, her regrets, the moments she had tried to bury. She saw herself as a child, alone and afraid, as a young woman, uncertain of her path, and as she faced each vision, she felt a weight lift from her heart, as though the lake were drawing out her pain, leaving her lighter, freer. When she emerged from the chamber, Kalen was waiting, his eyes unreadable, but she could sense a change in him, a softening, as though he too were affected by her journey. The second trial was one of wisdom. She found herself in a cavern filled with strange symbols, ancient runes that glowed faintly in the darkness. She was given a riddle, a question that seemed to speak to the very essence of the universe, a puzzle that twisted her mind, forcing her to think beyond the boundaries of human understanding. Hours passed, and as she struggled with the answer, she felt the weight of the lake pressing down on her, as though it were testing her resolve, her patience. Finally, the answer came to her, a revelation that filled her with a sense of clarity, a knowledge that went beyond words, a connection to the ancient magic that had created the heart. The third and final trial was one of the heart. She found herself in a vast, empty space where only silence remained, a silence that seemed to echo with the sorrow of lost souls, the regrets of those who had come before her. She saw visions of her family, her friends, the people she loved, and she was given a choice: to leave the lake, to return to her life, to forget the heart and the power it held, or to stay, to claim the heart, and to take on the burden of its magic, knowing that she would never return. For a moment she hesitated, torn between her desire to understand and her love for those she would leave behind. But as she looked into the depths of the lake, she felt a strange peace, a sense that this was her destiny, that she had been chosen not to wield the heart, but to guard it, to protect it from those who would misuse its power. She chose to stay, and as she made her decision, the darkness lifted, and she found herself standing before the heart of the abyss, a crystal that pulsed with a soft, gentle light, a light that seemed to contain the essence of the lake itself, the dreams and sorrows of those who had come before. Kalen appeared beside her, his face no longer shrouded in shadows, his eyes filled with gratitude and sorrow. He told her that by choosing to guard the heart, she had broken the curse that bound him, that he was finally free to leave the lake to find peace. But he warned her that the heart was a heavy burden, that it would test her strength and her spirit, and that she would be bound to the lake until another came to take her place. Elara accepted her fate, feeling a strange joy and sorrow, knowing that she had found the answers she sought, that she had become a part of the legend she had once dismissed as a tale. As Kalen faded into the mist, Elara took her place by the heart of the abyss, her spirit bound to the lake, a guardian of its secrets, a protector of its power. And in Rivenmore, the people told stories of the woman who had ventured into the veiled abyss, who had become the new guardian of the lake, a spirit bound to the mist and shadows, watching over the ancient magic that lay hidden beneath the water. And as the years passed, the legend grew, a tale of courage, sacrifice, and the mystery of the veiled abyss, where the heart of the abyss still pulsed with a gentle light, a beacon for those who dared to seek it, a reminder of the woman who had given her life to protect it. In a realm beyond the borders of ordinary understanding, hidden between vast forests and cliffs, lay a town called Shadowmere. This town was isolated, surrounded by dense fog and twisting, overgrown paths that kept it hidden from the world. Shadowmere was a place of age-old traditions, whispers of magic, and superstitions passed down through countless generations. The townsfolk lived simple lives, but they harbored a great fear of the Wailing Wood, a forest that began just outside the town. The forest was always shrouded in an unnatural mist, a fog that clung to the trees and muffled any sound within its bounds. No birds sang, no animals dared to venture near it, and those who entered never returned. Legend had it that the forest was cursed, inhabited by spirits who were unable to rest, trapped within the shadows of the trees. No one knew where the curse had come from, or why the spirits were bound to the forest, but the people of Shadowmere knew well enough to keep their distance. However, curiosity knows no bounds, and as the stories of the Wailing Wood persisted, a young woman named Marin found herself drawn to the forest in ways she could not explain. Marin had always been different from the others in Shadowmere. While her friends would rush home before dusk, wary of the whispers that came from the forest, Marin would linger, watching the mist gather around the trees, her heart filled with a yearning she did not understand. Her grandmother, the town's healer and wise woman, had often warned her of the dangers of the Wailing Wood, telling her tales of the spirits who roamed the mist, searching for lost souls. But Marin felt an inexplicable pull toward the forest, a feeling that grew stronger with each passing year. On the night of the new moon, when the mist was thickest and the forest seemed to come alive with shadows, Marin felt the pull more powerfully than ever before. Unable to resist, she left her home and made her way to the edge of the Wailing Wood, the silence pressing down on her like a weight. She hesitated for a moment, hearing the faint echoes of her grandmother's warnings in her mind, but something deep within her urged her to continue. She stepped into the mist, the world around her fading as she moved deeper into the forest. The trees loomed above her, their twisted branches forming strange shapes in the fog, and the silence was so intense that even her footsteps seemed muted. As she ventured deeper, Marin felt a strange sensation, a tingling in her chest, as though something within the forest was calling to her. She could feel the presence of the spirits, the weight of their sorrow pressing down on her, filling the air with a cold, bitter energy. She continued onward, her heart pounding, until she came to a clearing where the mist seemed to thin, revealing a strange sight. In the center of the clearing stood a massive tree, its bark dark and gnarled, its branches twisted and bare. At the base of the tree, she saw a figure, a woman dressed in tattered robes, her face hidden beneath a hood. The woman's skin was pale, almost translucent, and her eyes glowed with an eerie light. Marin felt a shiver run down her spine as she approached, but she could not turn away. The woman looked up, her gaze piercing, and she introduced herself as Naira, a spirit bound to the Wailing Wood, a guardian of its secrets. Naira explained that the forest had once been a place of beauty, a sanctuary for those who sought refuge, but it had been cursed long ago, a curse that trapped the souls of those who had died within its bounds, binding them to the forest for eternity. Naira herself had once been a healer, a protector of the forest, but she had angered a powerful sorcerer by refusing to aid him in his quest for dark magic. In his rage, he had cast a spell that bound her and all who entered the forest to the shadows, their souls forever trapped, unable to find peace. Naira told Marin that the only way to break the curse was to retrieve a relic hidden deep within the forest, a relic known as the Tear of Eternity. The tear was said to be a crystal formed from the sorrows of the spirits, a powerful object that held the key to breaking the curse. But the path to the tear was treacherous, filled with trials that would test Marin's courage, her wisdom, and her compassion. Marin, though afraid, felt a surge of determination. She had always felt different, as though her life in Shadowmere was only a small part of her destiny, and now she understood why. She agreed to help Naira, to retrieve the tear and free the spirits trapped within the Wailing Wood. Naira warned her that the journey would not be easy, that the forest would test her in ways she could not imagine, but Marin's resolve was unwavering. Naira led her to the edge of a dark path, a path that seemed to disappear into the mist, and told her that the first trial awaited her. As Marin stepped onto the path, the world around her shifted, and she found herself in a strange place, a realm of shadows and echoes. She could hear voices, whispers from the past, memories of moments she had tried to forget. The first trial was one of the heart, a test of her ability to confront her own fears, her regrets, her insecurities. She saw visions of her family, her friends, the people she had loved and lost, the mistakes she had made, the pain she had buried deep within her heart. She faced each memory, allowing herself to feel the emotions she had long suppressed, and with each confrontation, she felt a weight lift from her soul, as though the forest itself were cleansing her. When she emerged from the trial, she felt lighter, her heart filled with a sense of peace she had never known. The second trial was one of courage. She found herself in a cavern filled with strange, dark shapes, shadows that seemed to move and shift, creatures that watched her with eyes that gleamed in the darkness. She could feel their hostility, their anger, and she knew that they were the spirits of those who had died in the forest, their souls twisted by the curse. But Marin did not waver. She faced the shadows, her heart steady, her spirit unyielding, and as she stood her ground, the creatures began to fade, their anger dissipating, their forms melting back into the mist. She had faced her fear, and the forest had acknowledged her courage. The final trial was one of compassion. She found herself standing before a figure, a young girl, lost and afraid, her eyes filled with tears. Marin recognized her as a spirit, a soul trapped within the Wailing Wood, a victim of the curse. The girl begged Marin to help her, to free her from the shadows, and Marin, filled with compassion, reached out, embracing the girl, offering her comfort and solace. As she did, she felt a warmth spread through her, a light that seemed to come from within her own soul, and the girl's form faded, her spirit finally finding peace. With the trials completed, Marin returned to the clearing, where Naira awaited her. Naira told her that she had proven herself, that she was worthy of the Tear of Eternity, and she led Marin to a hidden grove, where the tear rested, its light shining softly in the darkness. Marin reached out and took the tear, feeling its power, its sorrow, its hope. She held it to her heart, and as she did, a wave of energy surged through the forest, breaking the curse, freeing the spirits who had been bound to the shadows for so long. Naira thanked Marin, her eyes filled with gratitude, and as the mist began to lift, she told Marin that she too was free, that her spirit could finally rest. Marin watched as Naira faded into the light, her form dissolving, her soul at peace. As Marin left the forest, the mist lifted, revealing the beauty of the Wailing Wood, the sunlight filtering through the trees, the sound of birds returning to the branches. She returned to Shadowmere, forever changed, her heart filled with the knowledge that she had fulfilled her destiny, that she had freed the spirits of the Wailing Wood, and that she had become a part of its legend. And in the town of Shadowmere, the people told stories of Marin, the young woman who had ventured into the Wailing Wood, who had faced the trials of the forest, and who had broken the curse that had bound it for so long. She became a figure of legend, a symbol of courage and compassion, a reminder of the power of the human spirit to overcome even the darkest of curses. In a distant land surrounded by sprawling plains and shimmering rivers, lay the ancient city of Eldrin's Reach, known for its towering walls and majestic spires that seemed to touch the very sky. Eldrin's Reach was a place of mystery and wonder, built by an ancient race whose knowledge of magic and the arcane arts had surpassed anything known in the world today. The people of Eldrin's Reach lived in awe of the ancient architecture, the statues that lined the streets, and the ruins scattered across the countryside, relics of a time when powerful mages had once walked these lands. But the city was not without its shadows, for beneath the ground, in a labyrinth of tunnels and caverns, lay the remains of a forgotten power, a dark energy that had been sealed away centuries ago, a power that was said to be capable of bending reality itself. The people of Eldrin's Reach had long feared this power, passing down tales of its corrupting influence, its ability to twist the minds of those who sought to control it. The elders warned the young to avoid the ruins, to respect the boundaries set by their ancestors, but there were always those who could not resist the allure of the unknown. Among these was a young scholar named Elandra, a woman whose curiosity often outweighed her caution. She was fascinated by the history of Eldrin's Reach, by the stories of the mages who had wielded unimaginable power, and by the ruins that dotted the landscape, each one hiding secrets that beckoned to her. Elandra spent her days studying ancient texts, piecing together fragments of a forgotten language, decoding the symbols and runes that adorned the walls of the ruins. Her obsession with the past had led her to uncover a forgotten prophecy, one that spoke of a hidden relic known as the Veilstone, a crystal that was said to hold the essence of the ancient power, a force so great that it had been locked away, hidden from the world to prevent it from falling into the wrong hands. The prophecy claimed that only one with the purest intentions could retrieve the Veilstone, that any who sought it for power or greed would be consumed by its darkness. Despite the warnings, Elandra felt a pull, a connection to the Veilstone that she could not explain. She believed that the relic was not merely a source of power, but a key to understanding the ancient world, a chance to unlock knowledge that had been lost for centuries. Driven by a need for answers, she prepared for a journey to the ruins where the Veilstone was said to be hidden, deep within the labyrinth beneath Eldrin's Reach. On the night of the full moon, when the stars aligned in a pattern that matched the symbols she had uncovered, Elandra made her way to the entrance of the labyrinth, a hidden door concealed within an ancient statue at the edge of the city. She whispered an incantation, a phrase she had deciphered from the prophecy, and the door opened, revealing a dark, winding stairway that descended into the depths of the earth. As she ventured into the labyrinth, the air grew cold, and the walls seemed to pulse with a strange energy, as though the stones themselves remembered the magic that had once filled these halls. The path twisted and turned, leading her deeper into the darkness, and she could feel the weight of the Veilstone's power pressing down on her, a presence that seemed to watch her every step. The first challenge she faced was one of knowledge. She came to a chamber filled with symbols and runes, each one representing a different aspect of the ancient magic. In the center of the room stood a pedestal, upon which lay a scroll. The scroll contained a riddle, a puzzle that required her to draw upon all she had learned, to understand the symbols and the connections between them. Hours passed as she worked, her mind racing as she pieced together the clues, and finally, the answer came to her, a realization that unlocked a deeper understanding of the ancient language, a knowledge that seemed to flow into her, filling her mind with images of the past. With the riddle solved, a door opened, revealing the next part of the labyrinth. The second challenge was one of courage. She found herself in a cavern filled with shadows, creatures that lurked just beyond the edge of her vision, their eyes gleaming in the darkness. These were the guardians of the Veilstone, spirits bound to protect it from those who would seek it for selfish reasons. As the creatures circled her, Elandra felt a wave of fear wash over her, a primal instinct that urged her to flee, but she stood her ground, refusing to let the shadows intimidate her. She spoke to the creatures, telling them of her quest, of her desire to understand, to learn, not to control or exploit. Her words seemed to resonate with the spirits, and one by one, they faded into the shadows, allowing her to pass. The final challenge was one of the heart. She found herself in a chamber filled with mirrors, each one reflecting a different version of herself, each image showing a path her life could have taken. She saw herself as a powerful mage, as a healer, as a queen, as a wanderer, each reflection representing a choice, a possibility. She felt a pull toward the image of herself as a mage, a figure of power and wisdom, but she knew that this was not her true path. She closed her eyes, focusing on the person she was, the person who sought knowledge for the sake of understanding. And as she did, the mirrors shattered, revealing a door that led to the heart of the labyrinth. Beyond the door lay the Veilstone, a crystal that glowed with a soft, pulsing light, its energy filling the room with a warmth that felt both comforting and overwhelming. Elandra approached the Veilstone, her heart pounding as she reached out, feeling the power radiating from the crystal, a power that seemed to flow into her, filling her mind with visions of the ancient world, of the mages who had created the Veilstone, of the sacrifices they had made to protect it. She saw their faces, their struggles, their triumphs, and she felt a deep connection to them, a kinship that transcended time. She understood now that the Veilstone was not merely a relic, but a part of the ancient mages, a fragment of their souls, their hopes, their dreams. With a heavy heart, she realized that the Veilstone was meant to remain hidden, to protect the world from the power it held, a power that could be as destructive as it was enlightening. Elandra knew that she could not take the Veilstone, that to do so would be to risk the very balance of the world. She placed her hands on the crystal, whispering a prayer of gratitude, a promise to keep its secrets, to honor the sacrifices of those who had come before her. As she did, the Veilstone glowed brighter, its light filling the chamber, and she felt a warmth spread through her, a blessing, a gift from the ancient mages, a knowledge that would stay with her forever. She left the labyrinth, the Veilstone's light guiding her back to the surface, back to the world she had come from. When she emerged from the ruins, the city of Eldrin's Reach lay before her, its towers gleaming in the morning light, and she knew that she had been changed, that she had become a part of the legacy of the ancient mages, a guardian of their knowledge. She returned to her life in Eldrin's Reach, but the experience left her with a deeper understanding, a respect for the mysteries of the past, and a commitment to protect the wisdom she had gained. And though she never spoke of the Veilstone, the people of Eldrin's Reach sensed a change in her, a light in her eyes, a strength in her spirit. Over time, she became a figure of wisdom in the city, a scholar whose knowledge seemed to surpass the limits of human understanding, and the people whispered that she had touched the heart of the ancient magic, that she had glimpsed the secrets of the mages who had built Eldrin's Reach. And as the years passed, the legend of Elandra grew, a tale of a young scholar who had ventured into the depths of the earth, who had faced the challenges of the labyrinth, who had uncovered the knowledge of the ancient mages, and who had returned not with power, but with a deeper understanding, a respect for the mysteries of the past, a guardian of the Veilstone's secrets. In a remote and forgotten corner of the world, hidden by mountains that touched the sky and shrouded in mist so thick that it seemed almost tangible, lay the village of Ashford. To outsiders, Ashford was but a shadow, a place whispered of but rarely seen, for it was as though the mountains themselves protected it, casting a veil between the village and the rest of the world. The people of Ashford lived simple lives, sustained by farming and fishing, and their world revolved around a single, towering tree at the village's center, known as the Elder Tree. The Elder Tree was ancient beyond measure, its trunk wide enough that it would take 5 grown men to wrap their arms around it, and its roots delved deep into the earth, entwining with the rocks and soil of the mountains. Its branches spread far and wide, casting a sheltering shadow over the village, and its leaves glowed with a faint, ethereal light, even in the dead of night. It was said that the Elder Tree was the heart of Ashford, a living being that held within it the memories and wisdom of the generations who had come before. The villagers believed that the tree was a guardian, that it watched over them and protected them from the darkness that lurked beyond the mountains, and so they held it in great reverence. Each year, on the night of the winter solstice, the people of Ashford would gather beneath the Elder Tree for a ritual known as the Night of Whispering Leaves. During this ritual, they would light candles, sing songs of the past, and share stories of their ancestors, believing that on this night, the spirits of those who had passed on would return to the tree, their voices carried on the whispering leaves. But one year, as the Night of Whispering Leaves approached, a strange occurrence unsettled the village. The leaves of the Elder Tree began to fall, turning brittle and brown, littering the ground around its roots. The villagers had never seen the tree shed its leaves in such a way. It was always green, always vibrant, no matter the season. Rumors spread through the village, whispers of an ancient curse, of dark omens, of a sickness that had befallen the tree. The elders were troubled, for they knew the importance of the Elder Tree, not only as a symbol of their heritage, but as a guardian of their village. They feared that if the tree withered and died, so too would the village of Ashford. Among the villagers was a young woman named Lyra, a healer's apprentice who had always felt a strong connection to the elder tree. Lyra had grown up listening to her grandmother's stories of the tree, tales of its magic, of the wisdom it held, and she had spent countless hours beneath its branches, feeling a sense of peace and belonging that she found nowhere else. When she saw the leaves falling, her heart ached, for she could not bear the thought of losing the tree that had been such a central part of her life. Determined to find a way to save the elder tree, Lyra sought guidance from the village elders, but they could offer her no answers, for they too were at a loss. Desperate, she turned to her grandmother, the village's oldest healer, a woman who was known to possess knowledge of herbs and magic that had been passed down through generations. Her grandmother listened to Lyra's concerns, her weathered face creased with worry, and after a long silence, she revealed to Lyra a tale that had not been spoken of in years. She told her of the heartroot, a mythical root said to lie at the base of the elder tree, hidden deep within the earth. The heartroot was believed to be the source of the tree's life, a fragment of ancient magic that connected the tree to the very soul of the world. But long ago, a darkness had seeped into the heartroot, a curse that had been placed upon it by a being of great malice, and though the tree had endured for centuries, the curse had never been fully lifted. Her grandmother told Lyra that if the heartroot were to be cleansed, the curse broken, the elder tree might be saved. But such a task was dangerous, for it required a journey into the heart of the tree itself, through tunnels and caverns that were filled with shadows, guarded by creatures that had been drawn to the heartroot's power. Lyra felt a surge of determination, for she knew that she could not stand by and watch the elder tree wither and die. She resolved to find the heartroot, to cleanse it, to lift the curse that had plagued it for so long. Her grandmother warned her of the dangers, urging her to be cautious, to rely on her instincts, to remember the teachings of the healers, and Lyra promised to heed her advice. Armed with herbs for protection, a small lantern to guide her through the darkness, and a vial of sacred water blessed by the village elders, Lyra made her way to the base of the elder tree. As she approached, she felt a strange energy in the air, a feeling of anticipation, as though the tree itself knew of her intentions. She placed her hand on the bark, whispering a prayer for guidance, and as she did, she felt a warmth spread through her, a silent encouragement that strengthened her resolve. She found a narrow passage hidden among the roots, a tunnel that descended into the earth, leading her deeper into the tree's heart. The air grew colder as she ventured down, the walls lined with twisting roots that seemed to pulse with a faint, eerie glow. She followed the path, her footsteps echoing in the silence, until she reached a cavern where the roots converged, forming a tangled mass around a pool of dark, still water. In the center of the pool lay the heartroot, a twisted, gnarled root that pulsed with a dark energy, its surface covered in strange, pulsating veins that seemed to writhe beneath the light of her lantern. As she approached, she felt a wave of nausea, a sense of dread that made her heart race, for she could feel the malevolent energy emanating from the root, a darkness that seemed to reach out, seeking to ensnare her. Summoning her courage, Lyra took out the vial of sacred water, pouring it onto the heartroot, chanting an incantation her grandmother had taught her. As the water touched the root, it hissed and steamed, the darkness recoiling, writhing in agony. But the darkness was strong, and it fought back, lashing out with tendrils of shadow that wrapped around her, filling her mind with visions of despair, of loss, of hopelessness. She could feel herself slipping, her strength waning, but she remembered her grandmother's words, the stories of the tree, the connection she felt to it, and she fought back, focusing on the light within her heart, a warmth that pushed against the darkness. She continued the chant, her voice growing stronger, and as she did, the darkness began to fade, its grip loosening, the shadows retreating. Finally, with one last surge of energy, the darkness shattered, dissolving into nothingness, and the heartroot began to glow with a soft, warm light, its surface smooth and unblemished. The curse had been lifted, and the energy of the heartroot flowed through the roots, up into the tree, filling it with new life. Lyra felt a warmth spread through the cavern, a feeling of peace and healing, and she knew that the elder tree had been saved. She made her way back to the surface, and as she emerged from the tunnel, she saw that the tree's leaves had returned to their vibrant green, the branches swaying gently in the wind, as though in gratitude. The people of Ashford gathered around her, their faces filled with wonder and relief, and they celebrated Lyra's bravery, her determination, her connection to the tree that had saved them all. And as the night of whispering leaves began, the villagers told the story of Lyra, the young healer who had ventured into the heart of the elder tree, who had faced the darkness that threatened to consume it, who had saved the village of Ashford from a fate that had seemed inevitable. They spoke of her courage, her wisdom, her compassion, and they knew that she had become a part of the tree's legacy, a guardian of its secrets, a symbol of the strength and resilience of the people of Ashford. And so, with the tree restored, the village continued to thrive, the people living in harmony with the land, forever grateful to the young woman who had saved them. And the elder tree stood tall, its branches sheltering the village, its roots entwined with the mountains, a silent guardian that watched over them, a reminder of the power of hope and the strength of the human spirit. The city of Eloria lay nestled between the shores of the Crystal Sea and the vast expanse of the Erythian forest, its white stone walls gleaming in the sunlight. Eloria was a city known for its beauty and for the arts it nurtured. Musicians, poets, and scholars came from distant lands to study in its halls, for the city was a place where knowledge and creativity were treasured above all else. But it was also a place of mystery, for hidden deep within the heart of Eloria was a secret, a relic that held a power so great that only a handful of people knew of its existence. This relic was known as the Crystal of Memories, a gemstone the size of a man's fist, hidden away in the library of the Arcanum, the oldest building in Eloria, built when the city was young and its founders had sought to create a place of wisdom and learning. The Crystal of Memories was no ordinary gemstone. It was said to contain the knowledge and experiences of everyone who had ever lived in Eloria, a vast repository of thoughts and emotions, a living history that could only be accessed by those who understood its mysteries. But it was also a dangerous artifact, for if someone with impure intentions attempted to use it, the crystal would corrupt their mind, filling them with madness. The crystal had been kept safe for centuries, guarded by the keepers of the Arcanum, an ancient order sworn to protect Eloria's secrets. The keepers lived humble lives, dedicated to preserving the wisdom of the past and ensuring that the knowledge of the crystal would never fall into the wrong hands. One of these keepers was a young man named Finian, an apprentice who had spent his life studying the history of Eloria, learning the stories of its people, memorizing the songs and legends that had been passed down through the generations. Finian was a curious soul, always asking questions, always seeking to understand more, and though he respected the traditions of the keepers, he could not help but wonder about the Crystal of Memories. He had heard the stories, the whispered tales of its power, and he longed to see it, to understand what secrets it held. His mentor, an elderly keeper named Alaric, had warned him against such thoughts, reminding him that the crystal was not something to be tampered with, that its power was both a blessing and a curse. But Finian's curiosity was a flame that could not be extinguished, and one night, when the city was asleep and the halls of the Arcanum were silent, he made his way to the chamber where the crystal was kept. The door was locked, but he had learned the old ways, the chants and the symbols that would open the ancient locks. And as he stepped into the chamber, he felt a sense of awe and fear, for before him lay the Crystal of Memories, its surface glowing with a faint, pulsing light. He reached out, his hand trembling, and as he touched the crystal, he felt a rush of energy, a flood of memories that filled his mind. He saw the lives of the people of Eloria, their joys and sorrows, their hopes and fears, a tapestry of emotions and experiences that stretched back through the ages. But as he delved deeper, he felt something dark, a presence that lurked within the crystal, a shadow that seemed to watch him waiting. He tried to pull away, but he was trapped, his mind entwined with the memories, unable to escape. The shadow grew stronger, filling him with despair, with visions of destruction and chaos, and he realized that he had awoken something within the crystal, a darkness that had been waiting, biding its time. In his panic, he called out to Alaric, his voice echoing through the chamber, and moments later his mentor appeared, his face filled with horror as he saw Finian entangled in the crystal's power. Alaric rushed forward, chanting an incantation, a prayer of protection, and slowly, the darkness receded, releasing its hold on Finian. He collapsed to the floor, his body trembling, his mind filled with fragments of memories, images that he could not understand. Alaric helped him to his feet, his voice stern but filled with concern, warning him of the dangers of the crystal, of the price that must be paid for knowledge, for understanding. Finian listened, humbled and shaken, and as he looked into his mentor's eyes, he realized that the Crystal of Memories was not merely a relic, but a living entity, a vessel of knowledge that carried within it both light and darkness. Over time, Finian learned to respect the crystal, to understand that some secrets were meant to remain hidden, that some knowledge was too great, too dangerous for one person to possess. He dedicated himself to the keepers, to the protection of Aloria's wisdom, and as he grew older, he became a guardian of the crystal, a protector of the city's past. The people of Aloria never knew of the dangers that had nearly befallen them, of the darkness that lurked within the crystal, waiting for someone to unlock its secrets. They continued to live their lives, creating music, writing poetry, studying the stars, blissfully unaware of the power that lay hidden in the heart of their city. And Finian watched over them, his mind forever marked by the memories he had glimpsed, his heart filled with a silent resolve to protect them from the knowledge that could destroy them. He knew now that the crystal of memories was not a treasure to be coveted, but a burden to be carried, a responsibility that he would bear for the rest of his days, a guardian of Aloria's secrets, a keeper of its past. Blackwood Manor had stood for centuries, perched on the hilltop like a shadow over the village below. Its stone walls were weathered by the elements, the windows cracked and boarded up, and the iron gates that once welcomed guests now rusted and twisted, struggling to hold back the encroaching wilderness. No one in the village had dared step near the place for generations, for it was said that the house had its own mind, and that those who went in never came back out the same. When Alice moved to the village, she had heard all the rumors, about the strange disappearances, about the eerie lights that flickered from the upper floors on moonless nights, and most persistently about the candles. They were always mentioned in hushed tones, as if speaking of them too loudly might draw them out of the dark where they belonged. But Alice was a writer, drawn to mystery and things left unsaid. She had to see it for herself. Her arrival had been met with polite nods and wary glances. Alice had rented a small cottage by the river, far from the center of the village, where the houses were close-knit and the gossip was thick. At night, the sound of the wind in the trees was the only thing that kept her company. But her curiosity about Blackwood Manor gnawed at her, especially when the townsfolk would stare out of their windows, crossing themselves as a low, mournful bell tolled in the distance. No one spoke of the house in detail, but everyone seemed to know that it was best to stay away. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Alice's curiosity got the better of her. She had finished her work for the day, the typewriter clicking rhythmically in the dim light of her cottage. She stood and stretched, her eyes falling on the dark silhouette of Blackwood Manor on the hill. It had been a cold day, and the mist from the forest had crept through the village like a living thing. There was no sound except the rustle of the leaves and the distant murmur of the river. Without another thought, she grabbed her jacket and set out toward the manor. The walk was long, and the path was overgrown with vines and weeds. The air grew colder as she ascended the hill, and the wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it an unsettling feeling. As she neared the gates, she noticed how the iron seemed to groan in protest, the heavy hinges creaking under the weight of time. The gates were ajar, as if inviting her in, though Alice was aware that something about this invitation felt wrong. Still, she stepped inside. The grounds around the manor were wild, wild with neglect, wild with the forest's desire to reclaim the land. The grass grew thick, and bushes crowded against the house, their twisted limbs clawing at the stone like fingers. The manor loomed ahead, dark windows staring out like empty eyes, its tall, jagged roof cutting into the sky. Alice stood for a moment, her breath fogging the cold air. She had heard that the manor had once been a grand estate, home to generations of the Blackwood family, but the house had fallen into ruin after the mysterious death of Lord Blackwood. His death had been shrouded in rumors, whispers of madness, strange rituals, and the eerie glow of candlelight seen through the manor's upper windows. She glanced around, heart racing with both excitement and fear, but the wind had died, leaving a thick, oppressive silence in its wake. She took a deep breath, pushed open the door, and stepped inside. The moment she entered, the temperature seemed to drop. Her breath came out in visible puffs as she made her way through the entry hall, a massive room with high, vaulted ceilings and portraits of long-dead Blackwood ancestors hanging on the walls. Their eyes seemed to follow her as she walked, the weight of their gazes making her skin crawl. But it was the smell that truly struck her. It wasn't the musty, decaying scent one might expect from a house long abandoned. It was something sweeter, but far more sinister, like the wax of candles that had been burning for years, clinging to the air like a shroud. She reached the end of the hall, where a set of grand double doors stood ajar. The faint glow of light flickered from within, Cautiously, Alice stepped forward and peered into the room. It was a large, dimly lit library, the shelves heavy with dusty books. But in the center of the room was an altar, a stone table covered with cloth, and on it several tall, black candles. They were burning, their flames a deep, unnatural red, casting long, eerie shadows across the room. At first, Alice thought it must be some kind of trick, perhaps a resident spirit trying to lead her deeper into the manor. But the flicker of the flames seemed too deliberate, too alive. Without thinking, she stepped inside, her curiosity overwhelming her sense of caution. She walked slowly toward the altar, her eyes drawn to the candles. They stood in a perfect circle, the wax dripping down like dark tears. The scent of them was intoxicating, filling her senses as though the very air was charged with their presence. Something about the candles felt wrong, though. Their flickering light seemed to cast shadows in ways that didn't make sense, moving against the natural rhythm of the fire. As she reached the altar, she heard the faintest whisper, a voice on the edge of her hearing, as if calling her name. She turned, but there was no one there. She reached out, her fingers trembling, and as she did, the flames grew brighter, their glow intensifying until the room was bathed in a blood-red hue. Alice? Her heart skipped a beat. She wasn't imagining it. The voice was real. Slowly, she turned. Standing in the doorway was a figure, a man tall and thin, with hollow eyes and a pale face. His clothes were old-fashioned, a dark suit of deep velvet that looked strangely out of place in this dilapidated house. His eyes were locked onto hers, and his mouth curled into a slow, unsettling smile. "You shouldn't have come," he whispered, his voice cold and distant. Alice stumbled back, fear seizing her. Her hand brushed against one of the candles, and as if on cue, the room plunged into darkness. The candles were extinguished, but their red glow lingered in the corners of her vision, casting long, twisted shapes against the walls. She turned and bolted, rushing through the dark halls of Blackwood Manor, her footsteps echoing off the stone walls. The air grew heavier with each step, suffocating her, as if the house itself were alive, breathing down her neck. The whispers followed her, soft and insistent, as if the house were speaking directly to her, urging her to stop, to turn around. But Alice couldn't stop. She had to get out. As she neared the front door, she saw the man again, standing just beyond the threshold, blocking her way. His smile had grown wider, more twisted, and the darkness around him seemed to shift like smoke. "You can't leave," he said, his voice now a low, guttural hiss. "Not until you've answered the call." Alice's breath hitched in her chest, and for a moment, she thought she might faint. The door was right in front of her, but it felt miles away, the air thick with dread. The man reached out toward her, his fingers impossibly long and cold. But before he could touch her, the ground beneath her feet began to tremble. The walls of the manor cracked, the candles on the altar reigniting with a burst of flame, casting a violent red light across the room. With a scream, Alice lunged forward, pushing through the door and stumbling into the yard. She ran, her legs burning with the effort, until the manor was nothing but a silhouette against the sky. She didn't stop running until she reached the village, the sound of her footsteps echoing through the empty streets. The next morning, Alice was gone. No one had seen her leave the manor, and no one had heard her scream. The townsfolk said they hadn't heard anything at all. But as they went about their day, they couldn't help but notice something strange. The candles in the windows of Blackwood Manor were burning again, their red flames flickering like eyes in the dark. And at night, when the fog rolled in from the hills, the villagers sometimes swore they could see a figure standing at the window, tall, thin, and smiling, waiting.